Hi folks, how are you doing? Today in the 6th round of the Tashkent FIDE Grand Prix there was a little game I thought it was worth analyzing for a while, and in this video I wanted to share it with you. The game was played between two Russian GMs. We have Dmitry Andreikin with white pieces and Sergei Karjakin as black. Let's see what happened there. We have Andreikin playing d4, knight f6, 2 knight f3, e6. Usually Karjakin plays the Nimzo Indian, the Queen's Indian defense. He's a great expert on that. And now Andreikin goes with bishop g5, the Torre attack. Now I think opening is not Andreikin's main strength. He showed it, for instance, in the World Cup where he reached the finals with Kramnik, and he was advised by Vladimir to improve his openings in order to play well in the next candidate. So I think he usually deviates from well-known theory just to play chess. It's a very respectable option. Bishop g5, not a bad move at all. And Karjakin goes c5. Okay, knight to c3. This is not the most orthodox way of playing a 1d4, a queen's pawn opening, but I mean, white is developing a piece. It can't be bad, and still can transpose into very well known or very kind of common looking structures. Now Karjakin took on d4, and if knight takes, for instance, after something like bishop e7, e4, this could be very likely to be a very Sicilian position, very similar. But Andreikin didn't take with the knight, he just instead takes with the queen, not caring about losing a tempo after knight c6, very natural move which Karjakin of course played. He goes with the queen to h4. Now black has a Taimanov or Khan style of position, while white is developing pieces. He just has both knights out, the bishop on g5, the queen on h4, and he just wants to play a game of chess. Bishop b4 was played here. The knight is protecting, of course, the bishop, and black is threatening to spoil white's pawn structure, which, as we're gonna see, Andreikin cares very little. He plays e4, allowing bishop takes, which basically happened, and he takes back. Obviously Andreikin isn't hoping for a pleasant endgame with this horrible pawn structure here. Pawn islands, isolated doubled pawn, this is horrible for an endgame, you of course know that. Instead, active play and open lines are what white expects to see with his good development, the knight, bishop, and of course the bishop pair. So an interesting game ahead, as we're gonna see. h6 was played here. White really doesn't want to exchange on f6, he wants to keep pieces here, of course, and he can afford to play bishop to d3, defending the e4 pawn, as there are a couple of pins here. Not only the knight is pinned, but also this pawn is pinned, the rook is hanging there, so the bishop cannot be taken so far. d6 is played, well, creating kind of a little pawn center, very typical of the Schwenningen, if that's pronounced correctly, Sicilian, if I'm not mistaken. And Andreikin keeps developing pieces. Now rook to the open d file. Well, rook g8, already a little bit weird move, but the position is a little bit weird already. So as white doesn't really want to exchange pieces on f6, he's with this move getting away from the pin on the h file. Karjakin is asking this bishop on g5 what is he going to do, and as you would expect, Andreikin doesn't exchange but keeps pieces, keeps his bishop pair, goes to e3. e5 is played here. Okay, it controls dark squares. Black has exchanged the dark squared bishop, so tries to compensate it with the pawns controlling d4, f4, and creating certainly a very a position in the center, a pawn structure in the center, which is very similar to one we see in the Najdorf. We have a backward d6 pawn and d5 square, which could be potentially weak for black and strong and important for white, and a good pawn on e5, controlling a couple of dark squares here. Now the bishop moves again, bishop to b5, pinning this knight, opening the rook and the file for the rook, and here queen to c7, getting away from the d file. Andreikin plays knight to d2. Very useful to see how GMs constantly look for ways to improve their pieces. Now we see the knight on f3 wasn't doing that much anymore, so knight to d2 is giving extra protection now to the e4 pawn, and also could have the idea, theoretical idea, to go to c4 and attack the weakness on d6. Bishop e6, controlling c4, developing a piece, f3, and now queen a5. I mean, makes sense, attacking a bishop, the pawn on c3. Unfortunately, fortunately for Andreikin, he has this c4 move available, fixing his bishop position. It cannot go back if he wants to, so right now, but okay, it's protecting everything. And here, very committing move by Karjakin. Now he has to choose where he wants to put his king. He could have castled long. May not look very great because the bishop on e3, both bishop pair, the bishop pair could be dangerous here, the b file, etc. But who knows? This is not easy to evaluate. Instead, he goes for king to e7. He'd rather sees his king still in the center, connects his rooks and says, well, I have a grip on dark squares and it's gonna be difficult for you to get in. But as we're gonna see, Andreikin is going to find ways to open up lines. This is a risky strategy by Karjakin. Sometimes it could be successful. Today it wasn't the day to happen. Well, Andreikin just castles, unpins the knight on d2, connects rooks, develops, and g5 is played. Queen to f2 now, rook to d8, and of course opponent's king in the center, so open lines should be a priority for Andreikin here. h4, trying to opening things up. H takes, after knight h7, h takes, and g4 is played here, fixing the kind of weakness on g5. Now already there was a little line here in which black could have some problems. Knight b3 looking very natural, attacking the queen. Could go to c7, now queen g3, attacking g5 with both the bishop and the queen. And if f6, c5, opening up lines, was already uncomfortable to deal with. The king is, remember, in the center, and I mean, not that pleasant to play here with bishop pair and rooks and whatsoever. But Andreikin first plays 20 g4, fixes that, and after f6 his idea is to play king g2 and try to make full use of the open h file, now putting the rook there and try to attack this king from the king side. Interesting idea. Knight f8, looking to improve this knight, which was very badly placed on h7. Now it could go to g6 and later to f4, h4, rook h1, bishop f7, controlling better squares, and now knight f1, more knight relocations, very instructively seen. These GMs constantly looking to find great places for their knights, for their pieces. Now it could go to g3, later to f4 or h5, or as we're gonna see in the game, to much better places after this bishop on e3 moves. Well, bishop to g6, bishop d2, attacking a little bit this queen, molesting a little bit, and now after the queen is gone and wants to exchange queens, well, knight to e3, no queen exchange for the time being, and white is threatening to have a huge piece, probably on d5. F5 wouldn't be a bad square at all either, so we're going to see a very proud knight right now on the center of the board in a couple of moves. King goes to f7 to get away from the checks. Queen e1. White doesn't want to exchange queens clearly, so gets away from this diagonal to move the knight easily. Knight to e6. This knight is also looking for good squares on f4, maybe on d4, but knight f5. This is a huge piece. White is getting there first. Really, black cannot afford to take this knight, as if he takes with the bishop, g takes. Now the path through the h file is clear. The knight is under attack. The king is going to have tons of problems here. That was a mixture between trouble and problems. Yeah, great word, problems. Anyway, wouldn't be recommendable to take this knight here. So queen c7 was played. I mean, whenever you have to move a piece back and forth without much of a plan, it means you're in some problems, I think. So queen goes back once again to c7, and a great move here by Andreikin, c5, giving a pawn but opening more lines. After d takes, bishop goes to a very useful c4 square, and combined threats here against the king, pinning the e6 knight, which was probably one of the strongest, better pieces black could have. Now it's pinned, no more activity for this knight, and generally white is always playing against this weak king in the center. b5 was played here, kind of more or less a desperate move, I guess. Try to give the pawn back and get away white's threats, but now bishop to d5. Curious position. I mean, have you ever seen two knights, both knights of somebody, being pinned by the same bishop? Well, this is a cute position. Both knights pinned here on e6 and c6 by the bishop on d5. Rook ac8, but now rook h6. Rook is getting there, liberating the h1 square to the queen to come, and the h file is going to be definitely the big factor here in this game. Knight d4 was played, knight cd4, allowing bishop a5, the skewer there, but what to suggest for Sergei here? Really not easy. Bishop a5 is not that hard to find here. White is winning some material, at least exchange. Well, Sergei tries some complications tactically. Knight takes on c2, attacking the queen, but now the queen doesn't care about the bishop on a5 anymore. He wants the king. He wants to go for the black king and place queen to h1. Well, Karjakin took on a5, but of course you don't expect to see a GM sacrificing a piece like that, so not that difficult to find the winning combination here. Rook h7 check, and it's all she wrote. Black is completely toasted here, and the game was over, as after bishop takes, queen takes, black can basically choose where he wants to be checkmated. If king to f8, well, a check on e7, and a cute checkmate on g8, as the knight cannot do anything, is helpless, as it is pinned by the super bishop on d5. So there it goes, a very beautiful, in my opinion, game between Andreikin and Karjakin. Worth analyzing for a while, and I thought it would be interesting for you to see it. Thanks for watching.